What is going on, guys? Nathan here, and welcome to another MTG deck theory video. This time we're going to be looking at a Naya token deck whose commander is Gahiji, Honored One, and this deck is going to run up a total of approximately $110 to $120. Once again, if you guys are looking for super cutthroat EDH decks, this is not the place to look for those decks. The decks that I make for EDH are very much budget-oriented decks that are focused on having the most fun possible. So if you are looking for that $700 to $1,000 deck that's going to win on turn 4, this is not the place to look. But if you are looking to have a fun time and perhaps purchase a moderately priced deck, then this is definitely the place to look. So Gahiji is going to be the pilot for this token deck, and Gahiji is going to be a little bit of a toolkit card because you are going to be the token beatdown with this deck, and Gahiji at the very least is going to function as a token buffer, but he also helps your opponents eliminate each other as well. So Gahiji is definitely sort of dual function here. He helps your opponents kill each other, and he also buffs up your own tokens. So definitely a good commander to use. So, waiting for this to go back here. You guys can't see the loading thing, but tapped out is a little bit slow. Okay, so we're going to be taking a look at the mana base here. 36 lands, which is a decent amount. Blighted Woodland to help get that green and white mana for you. Command Tower is pretty much an auto-include in any sort of tricolor deck. Evolving Wilds for color fixing. 5 Forests. Mosswort Bridge, which is amazing because you will very often have a total power of 10 or greater amongst creatures you control just because of the sheer amount of tokens that you will have, and those tokens will be buffed up a little. So, 3 times Mountain, Myriad Landscape, which recently has actually jumped in price, and I'm not really sure why, but Myriad Landscape does help to fix your colors. Naya Panorama, again, more color fixing. 13 times Plains, Spinerock Knoll, which is a great EDH card because in EDH, people will definitely take 7 or more damage in a turn. Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, which is a nice, pretty much an auto-include land for any sort of red-white deck. All 3 of the corresponding colored temples, Temple of Mana, Temple of Plenty, and Temple of Triumph. Terramorphic Expanse, pretty much the same thing as Evolving Wilds, that color fixing. And we have the Vivid Lands. So nothing too crazy, too expensive, no sort of fetch lands or anything like that. Just a nice mana base here that costs very little, but will also supply you with the right colors. Whenever I look at decks that cost, $400 to $500, and they have all of these crazy cards in there, I sometimes consider why they would just cut off like $100 of that price tag and just stick with lands that will do essentially the same thing but for less money. But I don't know, that's just me. I always have a pay attention to the budget of decks just because I'm a poor college student, and paying $700 for a deck is so preposterous to me. Okay. So we are going to start off with the meat of the deck, the token producers. Assemble the Legion is going to be insane because those 1/1 red and white soldiers will have haste. So once this starts accumulating for 3 or 4 turns, it's just a nice, consistent source of token producing. And what's nice is that those soldiers also have haste, so you can use them right away. And haste is just great in Commander. Haste and Vigilance are both good just because of the nature of Commander and how you only have 1 turn for every 4 of your opponent's turns, essentially. Or not like 4, like in terms of the total amount of turns, for the entire game, you're only playing a quarter of that time, which means that you need to make the most use out of your creatures, so haste and vigilance are both very useful. Avenger of Zendikar is going to be crazy with any sort of token wide creature buffing. Those 0/1 plant creature tokens are already going to enter as possibly 2/3s or 3/4s or even 4/5s. So the landfall trigger is actually pretty minor in terms of the effect that it provides in comparison to what you might already have. So Avengers Zendikar, definitely the main function here is to get those tokens out, and the landfall ability is just a bonus. Benelish Commander is a nice source for soldier tokens. I would recommend playing it as the playing it for the suspend. You can play it for the 4-drop for the 4 mana cost, but you're not rarely, because it is possible to have soldiers on the field. It's just that his main use is to produce those soldiers, and you're not really playing him for the body necessarily. Benevolent Offering is going to gain a ton of life, really. The tokens are really nice because they are flyers, so those might turn into 3/3 flyers, 4/4 flyers, or 5/5 flyers, depending on how much buffing you have going on. And the life gain is going to be insane. So again, you can pretty much target the opponent with the least amount of creatures, so that you minimize the effect that they might get from Benevolent Offering, but this card will benefit you greatly. Captain of the Watch is going to be pretty insane as well. Other soldier creatures you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. You probably are going to have some sort of soldier creature tokens out there. And when he enters the battlefield, you get 3 tokens, so those are 2/2 tokens at the very least with vigilance. And most likely they will actually turn into 5/5, 6/6, or 7/7 tokens. Cloud Goat Ranger, pretty much the same thing. Conqueror's Pledge is great. You can pay that kicker cost in the late game to just get a mass amount of tokens. Deploy to the Front is crazy. It is just insane, because if you play this card while you already have a nice amount of tokens going on the field, then you just get so many creatures, and at the very least you can play it when you don't have any creatures, and you get a minimum of perhaps 5 to 7 tokens, because your opponents are definitely going to have creatures on the field. Just a very useful card and just insane in Commander. Devout Invocation, I'm not really sure how to feel about this card, because the 4/4 angel creature tokens are amazing, but the fact that you have to sacrifice essentially a combat turn to have those 4/4 tokens makes me a little nervous. I haven't actually played this card myself in a game yet, and not just because I haven't drawn it, but I'm like, this might be one of the cards that I might target to possibly take out, just because I don't know whether it's worth it to essentially make yourself defenseless for a turn. Well, not defenseless for a turn, but give up a combat step to have those tokens on the field. So I don't know, not really sure. Heliod, God of the Sun, is more here for his vigilance effect, although just because paying 4 mana for a 2/1 token is insane. If anything, he's a sort of last resort token producer, but he's really there for the vigilance effect, because again, vigilance is pretty powerful in Commander. Hornet Queen might seem really unusual here, but you get the 4/4 tokens, you get the 4/1/1 tokens with Flying and Death Touch, and those are flyers, so they benefit a lot from being buffed, because they'll probably get in for actual damage, and the Death Touch is also a bonus. And I figured I might as well run this card just because I am running green. So it's a little bit expensive on the green side, but very useful in terms of the amount of tokens it can produce. Increasing Devotion, just another great card. This is pretty much the same as Conqueror's Pledge, but instead of the kicker cost, you have the flashback cost, so pretty useful there. Nomads Assembly is pretty much a token doubler, except that you get the rebound, which is insane. So this is another one of those late game cards that just exponentially makes you more tokens, essentially. Rise of the Hobgoblins is really interesting because it is essentially played as a sorcery where you produce a bunch of tokens, but the first strike ability on the enchantment is actually great too. So you might not only have vigilance on your creatures, but first strike as well, which is great. Secure the Wastes, very basic token producing card. Storm Herd, another classic white card. This is just insane. And I actually had a friend who was piloting this deck who managed to hit Storm Herd with a what is it called? With a Spine Rock Knoll. So he played that for free on turn like 5 or 6, and that was just insane. And then White Sun Zenith is another classic card. The Zeniths are very good. So again, just a great token producing card. And I suppose I want to take a look at the removal cards now. So these are the cards. Actually, no, I take that back. We'll look at the cards that can buff your tokens here. So Beastmaster Ascension is pretty much an auto-include if you have any sort of, well, not an auto-include, but I'm saying with a Naya token deck, you pretty much have to run Beastmaster Ascension just because it's so good. You can easily hit that 7 quest counters in a single combat turn, and then your creatures are just gigantic. Cage Sun is going to be a nice little buff card, and it's going to help accelerate your mana. Cathar's Crusade is just another insane card because the ruling for this card is actually if I were to play 7 tokens all at once, then the first token that enters the battlefield will be a 1/1. And then the second token that enters the battlefield will then trigger the 1/1 counter on the first one. And the third token that enters the battlefield will now make the first creature 3/3 and the second creature 2/2. And it actually goes on like that, which I thought was an interesting ruling. So that just makes this card insane, and I cannot believe it costs 5 mana. Coat of Arms, another classic token card, and this card will just destroy. It can even make your soldiers into like 25/25s, so it's great to have essentially like best case scenario 25/25s out there, or whatever it is, which is just insane. Collective Blessing is another insane card for 6 mana creatures you control, get +3/+3. It's a very basic card, but I really just like it for how consistent it is. It's, for something like a Beastmaster Ascension is obviously better if your creatures get +5/+5, but Collective Blessing is just way more consistent because it's just such a basic effect. Dictative Heliod, another great card that you can surprise opponents with. Glory of Warfare, another just combat shenanigans for red-white. Marshal's Anthem is going to be a nice little buff card, but you do get the multi-kicker effect, so you can reanimate a bunch of your own creatures. Mirari's Wake is a pretty expensive card, but I figured it should be included. It's really worth considering in any sort of Selesnya deck where you have just a ton of mana acceleration and you get that extra buff effect, so it just really works out well in token decks. Spear of Heliod is just another great buffing card, and you get the extra effect, so it's just so much value for so little mana here. And then True Conviction, which is essentially the same thing as something like a Collective Blessing, because that double strike is going to, well, even if they're being buffed even more, that's going to double the amount of damage that your tokens can do, and give the extra combat effect of double strike, so that your tokens might not die if they face an evenly matched creature. And the lifelink is going to gain you just a shitload of life. So, True Conviction, great card. And then we move on to the removal. Pretty classic Banishing Light and Oblivion Ring effects here. They just are so good for targeting anything on the battlefield, so really utility here. Journey to Nowhere is going to be great creature removal. If you want to look at extra creature removal, things like Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile would be good cards. It's just I did not include them because Path to Exile specifically is like $9, and Swords to Plowshares is, well, that would be, I guess, another card that I would look at. That would be the first card that I would include for extra creature removal. And Suspension Field is going to hit pretty much every creature, being most creatures have toughness 3 or greater in Commander. Non-creature removal, Artifact Mutation is going to get you more tokens if you can destroy a really high cost artifact. So things like, well, I guess Bladesteel Colossus I think might be indestructible. So never mind about that. But, you know, minimum value even, you're paying 2 mana to, even if you blow up a Soul Ring, you know, at the very, very, very least, you're getting a token out of that for only 2 mana. So it's just, I don't know, it's just useful. But most likely you're going to be targeting a 5 or 6 mana cost artifact with this, hopefully. So you get those 5 tokens for only 2 mana. Or a Shards is a great include in here in a token deck. You're going to have a lot of creatures entering the battlefield under your control. Decimate is an insane removal card, and Return to Dust is also an insane artifact and enchantment removal card. Okay, also, I'll just continue down the line here. Geist-Ardent Monk is going to be a massive body because you're going to probably have a ton of creatures, plus that she has Vigilance, which is going to be great. And she produces tokens for you, so just a very valuable include here. Requiem Angel is going to really keep your tokens on the field once they die. So if you have Requiem Angel on the field and an opponent casts a board wipe, I'm not sure the order that the triggers would go off, but you can potentially just have turn your 1/1 soldier tokens into 1/1 flyer tokens, which is amazing. And Sudden Titan is a classic include for most white decks. And your haste givers are going to be super important here, because just due to the nature of Commander, haste is so valuable. I sort of defined that before, but if you can, play like a deploy to the front and then immediately attack with them, that is just so valuable. You just become so lethal with these hasty creatures. So we have Classic Fervor, just a very basic effect. Fires of Yavimaya, again another very basic effect. And In the Web of War will actually buff your creatures for 1 turn. So it gives all of your tokens haste, and it gives them +2/+0 for a single turn, which is when you get them on the battlefield. So definitely worth the 5 mana to spend on that as well. And if everything goes wrong for whatever reason, which is hard to believe because this deck is so geared towards beatdown, you have Martial Coup, which will produce you even more tokens, and you have Mass Calcify, which will keep your own things on the board, minus something like an Avenger of Zendikar, but it'll keep your own tokens on the board. So again, just continuing with the beatdown, clearing your opponent's creatures while you keep your own creatures on the board, and Ripborn Defenses, just in case you really, or in case your opponent board wipes. So the Populate is probably not going to net you something huge in terms of valuable. It'll probably just produce another 1/1 or a 2/2, which may or may not be buffed up to like a 5/5, but the indestructible effect is just so important. And with the new Magic Oath of the Gatewatch set releasing soon, there is actually another card like Ripborn Defenses that is being released. So that might be another consideration once Oath of the Gatewatch comes out. Okay, and then your card draw cards. So we have 6 cards devoted to card draw. And card draw is really awkward in the Naya colors because white has almost no card draw besides Mentor of the Meek, which is in here, Mentor of the Meek right there. That's going to be a great card for when your tokens enter the battlefield. And red pretty much has looting, which as their card draw mechanic, which I'm not a fan of. I really don't like looting. So instead we turn to green. So green is going to be decent here, and we have a single artifact card. So Harmonize is going to be pretty much your best card draw card here, just a very basic draw 3. Hunter's Insight is also decent because with so many of your tokens rushing for an enemy, even if you have a 3/3 token or even a 2/2 token that deals damage to an enemy using Hunter's Insight and you choose to target it, drawing 2 cards is still not that bad at instant speed for 3 mana. So best case scenario is that you have a bunch of 7/7 tokens or whatever, and one of them deals damage to an enemy just because you are sending essentially an army after them, or after your opponent, and then you Hunter's Insight for drawing approximately 7 cards. So that's best case scenario, but most of the time, I'm guessing you'll net about 3 or 4 cards off of Hunter's Insight, which is not bad. And Life's Legacy is also, you might think it's not worth it to include Life's Legacy because Life's Legacy is supposed to target larger creatures, but I use the logic where if you have so many tokens on the field, sacrificing 1 to draw even 2 or 3 cards is still good enough because you have enough tokens to provide a solid wall of defense, and you're drawing even 2 to 3 cards minimum for 2 mana, which is very, very nice. And then we have Mentor of the Meek, which I mentioned before. Ton of card draw potential there. And Skull Clamp is another huge card that can just net you a ton of cards. So that's just a nice card to keep in your hand if you happen to draw it or have it in your opening hand. And then Soul's Majesty, again, it's kind of like a Life's Legacy situation where it seems like you shouldn't, or like I shouldn't include it in a token deck because tokens are so weak, but most of the time you're going to have 2/2 tokens or 3/3 tokens, and if you can draw 3 cards off of for 5 mana in red, green, and white colors which don't have a ton of card draw, then that's not really that bad. Again, best case scenario, you have maybe some 7/7 tokens on the field and you draw 7 cards off of a 7/7, which is going to be pretty good. So again, card draw a little bit awkward, but I think this definitely works to at least make it so that you don't run out of fuel. Okay, and then our miscellaneous cards here. Foundry Champion can possibly just outright kill somebody if you have 20 tokens on the field and you play Foundry Champion. You are burning somebody or potentially a creature for 20 damage, which is insane. Plus, it's a 4/4 body with the extra abilities to buff it up. So, a very utility card even after its initial effect. Eros is going to be insane because it's going to make it so that your creatures essentially cannot be blocked because you're going to have so many tokens rushing for your enemy's face. So, that's an insane card if you manage to draw it. Mass Mutiny is an interesting card. It's not really fitting with the theme of the deck technically, but it's a good enough card on its own. It's kind of a good stuff card where it's like you target each opponent's highest mana cost creature, and you can swing for potentially 20 damage just with this single card. And then Master Warcraft can potentially, this card is just so good because it's so versatile. You can potentially outright kill somebody by making it so that your opponents do not declare blockers, or you can buy yourself a turn by if you're in a about to die essentially to your opponent's massive creatures or token army or whatever. This will definitely buy you a turn by declaring no attackers, so that you can possibly draw something that will save you. Parallel Lives is going to be insane, and it's worth noting that if you want to include a higher budget option for this deck, Doubling Season would be ridiculous, especially combined with something like Cathar's Crusade, where it deals with 1/1 counters, but getting those extra tokens is insane, and Parallel Lives is just the token effect, so that is insane if you manage to draw this as well. And Purphoros is another one of those cards, kind of like Foundry Champion, where it just deals so much damage. If you play this at turn 4, and you will probably get, 20 points worth of damage on your opponents at the very least, just because of the amount of creatures that will be entering the battlefield under your control. So Perforos is just an insane card, and definitely worth the $6 that it costs. And then finally, our finishers here are Insurrection. This is a card that I pretty much include in any EDH deck that can run red, because it's so good. And this is literally, well, most of the time it's an I win card, which is awesome. Overwhelming Stampede is another great finisher. This is why I'm so happy to include green in these token decks, is that you get crazy cards like Overwhelming Stampede and Beastmaster Ascension. And also, a sort of shout out to Overrun, which I believe makes your creatures get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. It's just that Overwhelming Stampede definitely hits for more power most of the time. So that's a crazy card as well. And Titanic Ultimatum is so expensive in terms of colors, but that's why these are finisher cards, because this will end the game for you, essentially. Creatures you control get +5/+5 and gain first strike, lifelink, and trample until end of turn. So Titanic Ultimatum, just a crazy card, and that's probably going to be what helps you to finish off those last couple of opponents at the table. And then finally, I probably should have covered these after addressing my mana base, but our ramp effects are Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and Soul Ring. I would like to have possibly more ramp effects in here, but it's just all of the rest of these cards are so good that I can't justify cutting anything in here to include more ramp, being that we have 39 mana producers as it is. So Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are, to me, the most efficient ramp cards that green has to offer, and Soul Ring is pretty much the most efficient artifact ramp that there is. So I just wanted to deal with very efficient ramp, and just include 3 of the best type of cards. And finally, we have just a massive maybe board here. There are options like Crusader of Odric and Seraph of the Masses, which are huge bodies, but I just can't justify cutting anything else in here to include this card. So if you guys want to take a look at this and see any cards that you might like, there are more board whites such as Day of Judgment. Stasis Snare actually isn't even that good. I'm not really... Yeah, Overrun, like I mentioned before. So anyway, that is Gahiji tokens. This deck is insane, and this is one of my favorite decks to actually play. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you all for watching, as always. If you want to buy this deck, it's going to cost you approximately $115. But it is one of the most fun decks that I think I've ever seen, frankly. But I am I'm very much of a Timmy player. I really like aggro decks, and this deck is 100%, well, 99% aggro. So I personally find this deck so incredibly fun, and I hope that you guys do too. So anyway, that's the video, guys. Thank you all for watching. As always, feel free to leave a rating on the video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to subscribe if you like videos like this, and I'll see you guys later.